Bass can be one of those instruments people often overlook, but it's way more versatile than it gets credit for. Case in point, lead bass. While bass can simply hold down the low end or outline the root notes of a progression, it can also do much more, like carrying a melody or playing lead riffs, flipping the traditional role of bass being used more as a supporting instrument. Camp Cope is a band that does exactly that. In their music, the bass is the hook. Their records have a really distinctive sound because of this. Instead of the dense arrangements a lot of trios go for, it's usually just drums, bass, vocals, and a single guitar track making up each song. Their approach to guitar and bass is especially interesting, with the bass taking on the lead melodic role, while the guitar plays a more supportive part throughout. Songs like the opener, Anna, and UFO Lighter are all built around simple yet incredibly catchy lead bass parts, while the guitar sits slightly panned to the side, playing jangly sounding chords. The mix is also quite unorthodox, with the bass pushed unusually high, arguably louder and more prominent than the guitar track. Looking specifically at their song The Opener, it begins with the lead bass riff in isolation for the first 4 bars, before the rest of the band kicks in. There's a subtle melodic element hidden in the guitar chords as well. The basic progression is a simple G major to C add 9, with a repeated melodic phrase played using the open G string. When combined with the bass riff, which again is mixed much higher than you'd typically expect, it creates a nice open feeling to the composition. Another way to take this idea a step further is through the technique of doubling, but not in the traditional sense. Usually, when you think of doubling, you probably imagine doubling rhythm guitars or vocals to add width in a stereo mix. But in this case, doubling serves a completely different purpose. It combines both the traditional role of the bass and the kind of melodic lead playing we saw in those Camp Cope examples, where the bass carries the hook, so you're effectively getting the best of both worlds. There are 2 ways to approach this. The first is by merging both roles into a single hybrid part, one that can be played as a single performance. This often involves using droning notes to hold down the root of the progression, while weaving in a melody either above or below that drone. Peter Hook's playing style is a great example of this. His part in Love Will Tear Us Apart does exactly that, locking in the harmony while still delivering a lead line that carries the main melodic idea of the song. The other way to approach this is by splitting the parts into separate tracks. It's a great recording trick to learn, or you could go the route of a band like Ned's Atomic Dustbin, with 2 separate bassists to write and perform these unique compositions. If you want to try this for yourself, you could start by writing a simple bass line that outlines the root notes, and then layer a second part that's more melodic on top. Or you could even take a traditional bass line and reshape it into a lead part. In this track I was working on recently, I started with a fairly standard bass line, mostly outlining the root notes of the progression, with a little melodic movement in between. But instead of stopping there, I turned that line into the main melodic hook of the song. To support it, I played a similar part, but this time harmonizing mainly with 5th notes 2 octaves higher on a separate track. This gave it a cool doubled effect, not for stereo width, but for tonal contrast, since both parts are staying centered in the mix. The first track provides the low end you often want from a bass guitar, while the second track helps the melody to stand out in the mix. I also layered in a duplicate of that second track with a heavy distorted tone running in parallel. To fill in a bit more space, I added a pop in the gaps of the original line, along with a clavinet playing the same notes for some extra texture. Then, with a bit of production, plus some guitars and drums, it ended up sounding like this. If you're interested in more creative approaches to bass, check out my video on Japanese punk bass lines next.